Good afternoon, COM 3430. Dr. Mueller today, Friday, almost 1 p.m. A little cold and dreary out, and I'm going to admit right away I'm a little bit under the weather, fighting off whatever this thing is that's going around most offices and public places nowadays. So please bear with me as I, allow my lozenge to work and also a few sips of water. Wanted to keep ahead, try to stay about a week or more ahead to you prompting on the next assignment. And again, always try to demonstrate the absolute value of some of this work. I believe it's quite important. Again, in this course, I try to take it from something, and I use the word esoteric or theoretical, to something really important that is direct practical application on your business. I also thought of this, I often walk and think about students, and I was thinking, so often students are in a role where they want to be instructed what to do. And one thing I've always has troubled me a bit is when students say, well, I'm not quite sure what you want. It's not about what I want. It's about your thinking process, what you think. I just came out of a meeting with all the advertising professors, and one of the big measured outcomes in our program is logical and rational thinking toward the end solution. Well, what could be more applicable to that than COM 3430? It's why you do what you do. How did you get there? And for often, if you're working in a course, what do I want? What's the assignment? What do I have to get done? Don't appease me. Build yourself. These are so important, and I really do believe the issues and topics we write about, again, writing in the discipline, are really important to your future careers, when most often an ethical situation is not going to be about what someone did or did not tell you to do. It will be about your decision making, your choice making, your logical approach to what you're going to do next. And again, I was mentioning to one or two students, much of that will come up in case studies in a more complex way when you'll see 4 or 5 different characters in the case. And each of those actors or characters requires their own custom ethical response. Okay, this is all real. Okay, and so I try to, I keep promoting that, but that's really important for what I believe I owe you as your learning outcome in the course. Okay, so we've got that assignment coming up on AI, and AI is changing. You might have seen there's this new $500 billion initiative coming now where they're going to build this whole huge network of centers, 500,000 square feet each, that have to generate and create this power web that we need to run AI. Also saw some statistic that running a AI type search takes 5 times more electricity or power than what was a traditional Google search. So it's all changing, and it's all going to come down upon us all in our personal and business lives. So again, relevant, 1,500 words, write well on your AI position. Now, going forward, this is a real important one, and I frankly take this one sort of personal, and I'm going to explain why. Authentic culture and race in advertising. Authentic culture and race used in advertising. Due Tuesday, February 4 at 9 a.m. Okay, that's that following Tuesday. And I'm just looking now at the assignment. Most of the setup and narrative for this assignment, it's in the actual assignment text body. But, it starts by saying in a recent survey, 41%, only 41% say they feel represented in the ads that they see. Okay, and these are all supported articles and readings you'll find in the week block. Okay, and we know that, social action, social justice, I've written on that, I've researched on that. There's a real push, many times advertisers too want to very rapidly go where the culture is going, right? So that is better racial assimilation. If we look at the actual composition of race in the United States, we could argue clearly that coming up through the decades, races weren't proportionally represented in advertising, right? If you take the percent of certain races in the overall culture, do we see that much representation? Okay. So think about that, and then think about, and again, read this again. I'm not going to read this whole setup to you in the assignment, but there's almost this race to include race. Okay, a race to include, and that becomes metaphorically sort of plug and play. Now let's just, increase our racial diversity. Let's stick some new models in these things. Let's put, and you force it in the sense that, do we know that there has been proper cultural assimilation? In this case, not just to society, but I'll take it down this simply to you. If you're an advertiser and you're representing a brand product or a brand service, is that something that's commonly used by different specific races? Has that been tested? Is it true? Okay, and I'm going to give you an example of that coming up here. Okay, I also give you here what is the full definition of assimilation into a culture or society. Okay, now that's again overall assimilating into the society, but in this case for advertising, we want to look at, identify specifically specific products or brands and use those as case studies and say, where do we put the mix of race into our ad content, and is it authentic? Does it make sense? Okay, again, not just dropping different racial models into the ad content, product shots. Does it make sense ethically? Is it real? Okay, and that's going to be tough because ethically you might have topics, might be coming down from on top, from the brand to the agency. Hey, by next 30 days, I want to see you increase the race mix 30% from what we're doing now, 30% increase in race mix. Then you have to go back, and again, these are some of the big challenges, and I'll try to understand, is that sure simply to do? You just, sort of, administer different orders and get different things going and bring in different racial models into your ad preparation. But is that real and authentic? Is that ethically right? Okay, so read through this about assimilation, what it means in society. Then, of course, we look for that more representative mix. But then there's a lot of questions in this. Is it reality that there is a good racial mix among the current consumer brand base, of the consumers? A while back, there was a new, I think, marketing VP or marketing director at North Face and said, hey, we liked old white guys because, they built a lot of the North Face business, but, not so much anymore. We want a big racial mix in North Face. Well, that affected me because of a story I'm going to tell you. So is it true? I mean, that's maybe good, but is it realistic? What if your current consumer base for North Face is still, I'm making this number up, I don't have this in front of me, but 85% white male? Do you discount that in shifting your racial representation in your advertising media if there isn't really other races highly involved or purchasing the product? Okay. Again, here we go. Here's what happened to me. This is all written up in the assignment. Years ago, I was teaching an intro advertising course here at App State, early in my career here. And I announced the final project, and it was to create some advertising creative for any product of your choice in the North Face line. And I thought, well, that's got to work, right? Someone could pick a pair of boots, a heavy winter jacket, some more stylish, outdoor apparel, a tent. I thought there's such a wide range, everybody will be able to do well with this. Okay, I thought I'd be flexible in that way. A professor in our department came to see me and stated to me, and the professor was black, and there were black athlete students in the class. Professor came to me and said my choice of brand and products allowable for my final project were not suitable. And he referenced himself and these other black students in the course, and he said North Face was not a cultural fit and that North Face products would not be worn by those black students. Okay, that troubled me. It troubled me then, and it still troubled me today. And what had happened? As a white guy, I made an assumption. I made an assumption just because there was a broad product line, it would suit every need. But then I realized that wasn't the case. So from then till now, I'm still asking the same questions. And again, ethically, these are the types of things that, frankly, weigh heavily in my career. Am I making the proper choices in these situations as an educator or for you as a future advertising leader? Okay, how does that all fit together? Okay, so again, I look back at that course and it should have been choose any apparel brand. Choose any apparel brand to build the project, okay? By imposing North Face, I had not served all of the students. That's what I was taught by this professor who would surely know. I respected him in that opinion. Okay. And then I thought back earlier in my career, at another point, at early 2000s, I owned a sports agency back then, and I will tell you, I was one of the first, maybe only at that time, only agency working in NASCAR without any pay. Not, this was an investment. I was working with the early NASCAR diversity projects. Okay, and I remember I was working with a black race team owner, and he flew me all the way to New York City, and we went to FUBU. You might have heard of that. It stands for For Us, By Us. And we thought it would be a great fit because we had this culturally appropriate brand with a black race team owner who was struggling and trying to get some revenues in to build up his racing effort. And so again, that would have been culturally appropriate. Well, we were not successful. That did not happen. And I'll be honest with you, at that day, we were on one of the top executive floors at FUBU in New York. And the accountant executives in that meeting were white, who said, here's the revenue return value we would see on that sponsorship. So irrespective of the cultural fit to race, the decision was made by then, it doesn't make financial sense for us. So there's always realities in this. Do you see what happens? These are all ethical implications of how things work out. Okay. So again, from then till now, check out the updated sources in the assignment block, the week block. Look at North Face. And even now, there's diverse models in some of the North Face product ads. And to this day, I wonder, did the brand achieve that shift, right? And I can't find it anymore, but I had years ago an article, which was rather obscure, that someone who had worked at North Face stated they had not achieved that cultural diversity in their brand. Okay, but then there's some great stories going on now. Check out the story on Jimmy Chin. I think that's a great example of absolute, metaphorically not, but not only metaphorically, real hands-on work by Chin and photography and diverse models and activity related to North Face product. Okay, so things do change over time. But can you see with me the complexity of this and how important this is? Okay, so in the assignment, similar to before, you're going to see 4 major prompts. And you know how this goes now. You set it up in memo form. You're writing a business memo to the client. And I said to many of you last assignment, some didn't do it now. Date, to, from, subject. That subject line's a big deal. That's where you first sell what you've got. Some of you did this last time. You already used the word recommendations in the subject line. Well, if I'm the client, busy, I've got a lot of things going on, I glance at the memo, agency's making a recommendation. I've just got twice as interested in that piece of writing because I know I'm getting something I'm paying for. A recommendation. The client says, what should I do? What's the right thing to do here? Advertising agency's the expert. That's you. Okay? So think this through. Look through the 4 prompts. And again, some of you asked, how does this all work? The memo is just the structure and form. Then the essay form, that helps you decide how to put it together and write. Okay, and again, I've given you 4 prompts here, and I mentioned to some of you, if you want to juxtapose or reorder the 4 prompts to better fit what? The flow. So remember, you're always adding that sentence after the introduction, after the next supporting paragraphs. You always drop a sentence in there to create the flow, which is the connection and interrelationship to the next paragraph. It all should look like a tight puzzle. What are the learning points for students is they write against these prompts and they just look like they're plug and play. You can just see, but they're not interconnected. The student didn't think it through enough to demonstrate how they're all interconnected, because remember, your introduction cues up the interest of the client. The supporting paragraphs reflect on these prompts and bring in examples and sources, much of this given to you in readings. Also, I want you to bring in external sources, right? So you're sort of building out this knowledge in the supporting paragraphs. And again, reorder, juxtapose if you want. And then same thing, you come in with that conclusion with some recommendations, one or two. And in that sense, I say, remember after that to talk about an example. There's a possible use of an example you might want to give them. Think of one tactic, one recommendation you would make. And then is there a news source out there that demonstrates that type of racial assimilation in advertising? You should be able to find that, okay? So consider again the reality of the importance of this and some examples of it, and also perception of consumers. We already know many believe they are not properly represented. And again, you also wonder, is there an, sort of an advertising transgression if a certain race does not feel properly assimilated into a product, but yet all of a sudden you see that race showing up in all their action advertising, when it may be not very relevant at all. Okay. Very important. And again, these are times, and we're going to get down to the end of the course, when dignity is imperative, because there may be times when, you're getting it from top down to get this done in the next 30 days. I want to see a 30% increase in racial diversity. And you've got to say, wait a minute. We don't have that kind of customer base. And then you think back, how do you get there? Right? This is big thing, costs money. If you want more racial diversity, you've got to have some kind of training and encouragement to what? Back to the start. How do you assimilate more diverse races into using your brand, product, or service? Right? That might be part of your tactic or recommendations. And by the way, if you ever want to take this and just make an example of any company in this, pretend, it's up to you. This is all practice. If you want to pretend you're writing to the VP of marketing for any major brand representing any specific product, go ahead and illustrate it that way. Okay? Simulate it that way. Okay? And then you could come down to the bottom and say, here's one of the tactics. You could research this and find out what is the consumer base. What is the racial mix of the consumer base for a specific brand or product line? And then from there say, well, look, if you want more assimilation, we're still like 70% white consumer base. We've got to do some work here to assimilate customers to feeling comfortable in and, finding that connection with our products in line. Okay? 1,500 words again. Reference APA style afterwards. Okay, make this thing professional. Remember, and I'll say it again, sometimes I repeat myself because that seems to help students get better grades. Remember that the APA reference section is demonstrating your competence in making your recommendations defensible. The client looks at those APAs. It shows where you got information. It demonstrates you did the proper work to make a recommendation. And then if they say, well, why would you say we should do that? You have it all there. You've got the references. You've got the work that led you to believe that. You never, ever make anything up in these situations. It's always defensible and supported through the research work you do. Okay. That's it for today. Wanted to get this out on a Friday before I lose my voice or something else happens. But I appreciate your work and, doing pretty well. I think the class as a whole is doing well. And I always say this, every one of you have a lot of potential in this. Every one. It's dedication, time management, and work. And again, I realize with online asynchronous, there's more responsibility on the student. Now, again, I try to stay here with you as much as I can to keep you connected. Also, we're writing in a forum. Again, look at I never in this course say to people, hey, you've got to make responses to somebody else, because that to me ends up being too obligatory. Hey, Bob, great job. Hey, Sally, nice first paragraph. It can be meaningless. Put the effort in your work, but then invest the time to read the other submissions from other students in this cohort so you can get a really good understanding of the type of work other people are doing. We learn from each other. Okay, I learn from you every time I review assignments. Okay, so that's it. Got a lot of work to do. This is an important one. Authentic Culture and Race in Advertising, due Tuesday, February 4 at 9 a.m. Thanks so much. Hope you have a great weekend. Bye-bye now.